G'day, welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 120, and on today's show, we're taking a look at variables in Companion 4.0. I had done a version of this on an earlier version of Companion, but a lot has changed. So today we're going to take a look at what are variables, just if you're new to that, and then also where you would be using variables in Companion, because as Companion progresses, there's a lot more available with variables than were previously available, and it can make a very dynamic way of controlling your live streams rather than just like a static button of like, if this is pressed, do this. Now everything can be like dynamic labels, conditions that are placed on things so that you only, for example, like put something to air if it is already selected, and so you're not gonna have any weird things happen on air is how we make that faster. All right, so let's kick off with part one. And we're gonna take a look at what are variables. Today's topic came from Billy Joel T, who asks, I missed his question there. He says, any way to update this for Companion 4? A lot has changed and I cannot figure out how to make this work. So this is what today's one is going to be about. All right, so first of all, let's take a look at how variables are structured. There's a little problem with this list here, which is there's no space between the dollar signs. Just if I didn't put that in, my graphics program would actually calculate all of these variables, and you'd end up with a whole lot of random data rather than these variables. So variables are, when you go dollars parentheses, is going to tell Companion that you, instead of a sort of hard figure, you want to put in a variable that's going to take the place of something else. And there's a bunch of different types of variables that you can have. So the first one we got here, ATEM1, is referring to a connection to an ATEM. There's an internal variable, which is for Companion's core. We've got a sort of hour, minutes, seconds there. Custom variables that you can define. So I've got one that's defined for ATEMs 1, 2, or 3, depending on which of my ATEMs I want to address. And an expression is new to Companion 4. And that's kind of like a calculation within like a little bubble wrap that you can take that expression variable and then place that somewhere else. So it's sort of prepackaged. And another new one is local variables. So you can create any sort of value on a button and have that variable contained to just a button. And there's a lot of really great use cases for that, which we can show as we go along. All right, where to find documentation for these variables, because that's a good thing to know. If you open up Companion and you click down on Getting Started down here, tons of information here, everything that you need to do that. So could just be like, that's the end of the episode, go read the document. But obviously we want to demonstrate that. If you scroll down here, secondary admin controls, this is where you're going to have information about variables for modules internally, custom ones, and creating them, local variables, and then expressions, which I think we could get into next week, which is sort of the more complex version of variables. So it's a lot to take in. So use this document as something that you can go back to be like, okay, I want to do this, particular function here in terms of binary operations or whatever. And so this is all written down here in terms of giving you what you want to achieve. So just know that that is there and is available. All right, so the first one that we have is not this one. It is internal variables. I'm getting lost here. Internal variables. So the internal variable is part of Companion's core, and it can look something like this one, time of day 1. Let's go back to Companion, and I'll pull up this one. So you can see here on my profile, I've got hours and minutes, seconds here showing 11:44 a.m. And so I've gotten that by using this internal variable, and then I've put in a semicolon and then internal for minutes, and then I like saying the seconds nice and big, and so I've put them on a secondary button just with S. But you could go hours, minutes, seconds, and then this would be reading out the full time there. It's just that the spacing of that is not showing it. Okay, so where to find these things? Variables, if you click on variables on the sidebar here, this is going to be where you can click on then internal. Also down this sidebar is where all your internal ones are. So you can see you can access things like what IP addresses are you connected to, the connection status of a whole lot of all your connections, modules, connections, and keep going down here. Connection status to, yeah, I've got a lot in there, keep going down. You can pull the date and time, or the fact that it's like a Tuesday, the year, the host name. So this could help if you're trying to distinguish like which computer you're on and your IP address, that kind of thing. And then you've also got all of your page names if you wanted to place that dynamically within a profile. And what else have we got here? All of the names of the surfaces, satellite surfaces, and then some time operations here. So there's a ton of internal stuff that is available, and that's where you would go to find that. Let me go to where internal variables and this one. I think this is right. Connection on variables. So for example, my ATEM is a module, and then the connection is the specific connection to that. So my ATEM 1 here is referencing that I'm using a connection to my ATEM 1, and then I've got ATEM 2 and 3. And so these are variables from modules that you've added in. And we can go back to our variables, click on variables again. Again, this will all be in the sidebar if you want to scroll down there. But these are all the ones that I've got both connected and enabled. So they're not just sitting in my connections here. Like I've got ones here that are turned off. They're not going to show up. So ATEM 3 is disconnected at the moment, and I've turned it off, and it's not going to show up in variables. So make sure if you're trying to work with something that it is enabled, even if the device is offline. And so then you can click on ATEM 1, and it'll have all of the input information here. So, for example, there's a ton of audio inputs that I can read from. Audio routing is available. So going down the names of the inputs. I go up to here. Names of the auxiliaries, names of macros, multi-viewer windows, upstream keys. Keep moving all the way down. And yeah, a lot of upstream key parameters. So there's a ton of variables that you can use. If you ever want to work with it, you can just click this copy sign here, and it will copy the whole string here. Or it'll show you the current value that it is, and you can copy that value as well, so that you can find that variable and then go and paste it into a button to make use of that variable. All right, custom variables. Connection on variables, custom variables. I think that was the next one. So we just spoke about variables that come from modules or connections, but there's also custom variables, which is ones that the user defined, and they'll begin with custom semicolon and then whatever you place after that. So for example, I have 3 ATEMs, and it helps me to have this custom ATEM variable to equal 1, 2, or 3, depending on which ATEM I'm wanting. And part of the reason of that is just the simplicity of 1, 2, and 3 means that I can then embed that within the ATEM variable. So remember, the connection name was ATEM 1. That comes from up here, ATEM 1. I could come in here and rename this. I've called my ATEMs ATEM 1, ATEM 2, and ATEM 3, and it's because I can, at a later stage, replace this number with another variable, the custom variable, and then I can direct it to whether I'm talking about ATEM 1, 2, or 3 within the connection. So custom variables are here. If you click on that, or if you click on variables, they'll be in up here, custom variables. And it's just going to be, I've got a lot of variables in there, but you can either filter by it. So if I was looking for something ATEM, it's good to have good labeling practice when you are sort of building out the different types of variables. Otherwise you can get lost and try and be descriptive about it. So by default, it'll say a custom variable, but you can rename that as like input array. And that'll be more descriptive when you come back to that in a couple of months' time, and you'll understand what you're actually doing. So filter by up here, whatever you're looking for. I was working recently on disk A, downstream key for the ATEM, and so that's going to filter by what I have available here. And then if you want to create a variable, you can just type that in here. So just type it in, it'll create a new entry, and then you can choose whether to persist the value, meaning that after rebooting, after startup, it's going to remember the last value that there was. Or if you uncheck it, you can make it so that the startup value always equals something specific. And then while you're using Companion, it can change to whatever. And then when you reboot, it'll reset that value. So I usually just persist value, but there may be instances where you want to have that unchecked and have sort of startup values in there. Something to note here is that you can, within this, determine if this is going to be like just a simple text string or if you want it to be an expression, and you can click on this little thing here to show the parentheses, whether it's dealt with as a variable or if it's dealt with as an expression. Custom variables, and so I'll show you my ATEM one. So custom ATEM, you can see this because I'll refer back to this one later. Dollars, parentheses, custom, semicolon, and then ATEM is what I've just, when I create a variable, I just typed in ATEM. And we can see that currently the active ATEM is 1. And down on my ATEM here, I have buttons that can select ATEMs 1, 2, or 3 to denote like which ATEM I am directing. So that is one use of custom variables. Let me just check on custom variables. All right, next up is expression variables. This is new in Companion 4. So this is taking expression semicolon and then whatever defined text you have after that. And this is more of like a live computed expression. So rather than just like a static value, this is doing a calculation. So you'll find that over here under expression variables, or if you click on variables, it'll be up here. And this is kind of like, instead of a variable just containing a static number, this is going to do a math operation and then give us that result, and then we can copy this expression and use it elsewhere as something that's sort of predetermined. So for example, I've got input array length. If I click on this, this is where I give it that name that would appear here. Description, just so I remember what I've got here. So for example, this is using an expression where it is taking another variable, which is a custom input array. So this is just an array of ATEM numbers which are comma separated, and then it's splitting that out. And then I've also got another expression here to tell me the length of it. So what I'm looking for here is this equals number 47, which means that in this variable custom input array, it means they've got 47 entries is the number that I'm looking for. But it means that now, because remember this will change, if I change however many entries are in this other variable, it is going to change the number. So it means that now I can just copy this expression and use that elsewhere if I want to know how many inputs I have in my expression. So we'd find that one. The other one that's new here, let me go back to, where are we? Local variables, is local variables are new to Companion 4. I think it was 4 that came out. And these are actually really valuable because remember there's no space between the dollars and parentheses. I just have to put that in there, otherwise it'll resolve in the graphics. So dollars, parentheses, local semicolon, and then whatever value you want to create. So these are variables that are limited to a single button. So we can click on here, go over to buttons. We can go to, what would be a good one? Go to page 17. I've got some ATEM input buttons here for inputs like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It means that I can build a button and then copy and paste it across a page and just go in and update one variable so that I don't have to like put in 6 different entries all through the different buttons to talk about it being a different button. So if I click over on local variables, that's where that'll be, every button has local variables. And then under add variable, you can just go internal user value, and that will open up these, and you can just give it a name. So like slot n or slot stored equals 1. And I'll come back to this stuff later. So it means that, so now slot stored, as in dollars parentheses, local semicolon, slot stored, is going to give me this value 1. And so if I come over to, for example, this button here, this is my, I'm on an ATEM 2ME, which doesn't have inbuilt multi-viewers. Like, it's a hard patch out. It's not an input number that is available. So 9001 is that number. If I come over to local variables, you can see slot stored. That's where I've put in 9001. And now if I come up to here, I'm actually using this local value within another value. So remember the ATEM 1 module that we looked up? We had the short name of that was ATEM 1 semicolon short underscore 1 for input 1, but I've replaced 1 with the local value, and I replaced the ATEM connection number with my custom ATEM value. So you can see you can start to like use these within the buttons, and they will resolve to the actual number. Here is 9001 is the number. All right, let me just check what's next. Expression variables, local variables. I think I did that. And we should come to part 2, which is where to use variables. So I've been into this a little bit, but I just wanted to give you, like, so far I've shown you what variables are available in terms of, internal modules, connections, expressions, local ones. But now, where are you actually going to use them? You created the variables, that's great, but how do you, what fields do you put them in to make them work? So the first one we're going to do is the button text field. So we'll jump back over to companion, and I'll go to, where was it? Button text field, the clock. Okay, I'm going to jump over to my clock page. So, for example, I can put a variable within this field. If I just delete this, so I would find that by going dollars parentheses internal semicolon, and then you can see this list will start to narrow down to all of the internal ones that are available, which is still a lot. And then I know it was a time. Again, it narrows down again. So now these are all the time ones that I could have available. So I could put in hours, minutes, seconds like that. And, oh, sorry, I'm not on my page here. Let me go. Okay, so I'm talking about this variable here, hours, minutes, seconds. And to find that, we're going to go dollars parentheses internal, and then time will narrow it down. And then I can see from in here, I can choose like a 12-hour format or whatever I want. I'm usually working with hours, minutes, seconds to show me, 11:59, 26 seconds. In this instance, you can see on my clock page here, I wanted to actually have big numbers, like one per button. And so I've, instead of hours, minutes, seconds, I've just gone hours, so 11. And then you'll see here is minutes and seconds. So that's how that works on the button text field of a name. But if you click this expression button here, you can actually put in like a math equation to generate your number or your true-false scenario. And I'm going to unclick this one. These ones down here are, so how I start the show, for example, is this automated process using variables, and it's using expression, which I won't go into, but we can go into next week. But you see, if I click on, if it's just regular text, this has got other text that is below it. That's not a good example. I need to A/B that. Where are we? That's not going to work either. I have other feedback in here that is overriding this. But the idea is here, instead of it being just a text entry which will accept a variable, you can also click it to make it an expression, in which case you can, sort of do a math operation there and get that sort of modified result. All right, let's get back to, what was I next on? Context field step expressions. All right, it keeps on jumping ahead. I don't know why it's doing that. Step expressions, which is using an expression to determine which button step. So before we were looking at the button name, but below that you can take a whole bunch of actions, but they can also be different steps to that action, and there's different ways in which you can get the button to move forward. So I'm going to go to my, let me go to 17, I guess, no, 16. So remember I said I have these buttons 1, 2, and 3 for my ATEMs to select which ATEM I am working with. So I've currently got ATEM 1 selected here. And so if I've selected ATEM 1, I want to make sure that all of my sub-actions are just focusing on ATEM 1. So I'm going to go over to my ATEM Input page. This one's a little more complex, but I can just get rid of this. So let me just cut that for now. So by default, your button will be on auto, which will just be, as you press a button, it's going to automatically go to the next step. So you can see I've got steps 1, 2, 3, 4 here, and it'll run the actions when it's pressed. Or you can have it set manually. And so, for example, when you boot up Companion, it's always at step 1, so bear that in mind. And you might want to put in a press action like step set to current step, and so you could have it do something and then go to step number 2, for example, here, like that. It would then select number 2, and you could have it press and release. You could have it, and you click this box, force press. So you press the button, it's done, maybe like started a recording, and then it's set it to step 2, and you've also force pressed it so that it will also trigger what's on step 2. I'm just going to delete these because these are not necessary. So that's how you would manually advance the step progression, but the other option, new in Companion 4, is to base it on an expression. Now, this can just be a number. So if I hit 3, you'll see how this is suddenly highlighted here. So this is saying this is only going to target 3, basically. And all these other ones are not going to execute because I'm on step 3. So only what's in step 3 will execute. You can see ATEM 3, remember I switched that off. And I go back to here, ATEM 3, I switched off. So that is actually not available. Or if I did ATEM 2, then you see it selected this one, and now I've got all of my ATEM 2 actions here. But if I want it to be dynamic and I want it to relate to which ATEM I have selected, 1, 2, or 3 here, then I would type in the variable. So dollars, parentheses, custom ATEM. And now this is going to select a step based on the value of this, the ATEM variable here. So I could just put That's going to go a new button just so you can see the number change. So if I go custom ATEM, you'll see it equals 1. Excuse me. So check these, remember these are steps 1, 2, and 3 for the ATEM, and then 4 is a separate sort of function that I've got, which I won't go into this week. We can do next week. There's a bit more like expressions. And so if I select ATEM 2, do you see that this is now selecting, wait, did I select number 2? Where are we? Custom ATEM number 2. Should do. I don't know why that's not. There we go. I didn't refresh. So I selected ATEM 2. The value is 2, and so this is resolving as 2, and it's saying I want to do all of step 2's actions, which is where I've placed all of my ATEM 2. If I hit ATEM 3, then I don't actually have it connected, but it's saying to trigger ATEM 3 and nothing's going to work because it's all offline anyway. And I go back to ATEM 1, and now it's selected step 1. So ATEM 1, which is my 2ME constellation, is the one that will be selected. So that is how we use a step expression. I'm just going to paste this one back in here. We can go into this one next week. This is just using, instead of the ATEM, I'm using another variable and saying, if the variable is empty, then give me 1, 2, or 3. Otherwise, give me step 4. And step 4 is a utility to modify which input I'm working with. So that's what that expression is there. That will result in inputs 1, 2, 3, or 4. So on my, where are we, input page, this was the button here. So you'll see if I hold this down, it's going to populate that field, and this will jump to number 4. So now see, I've triggered that. So this is where I can change which input it is, camera 1 or 2. And that's operating on number 4. And then when I press that again, it will go out of that utility mode. So some more things that you can do there. Button, text field, step expressions. Let me see, did I get network settings changed? I don't know why that changed. That should be good. Buttons, maybe this one changed. Something changed there. Okay. I don't know if this will work, but anyway, we'll see what we've got. Ta-da. No, what happened to my graphics? Something happened to my graphics. Maybe it's H2R has gone down. Let me just check H2R in here. Yeah, H2R crashed. Let me ignore that and open that. And let me just quit that and start this one. And hopefully I come back to, where was I up to? Step expressions, button actions. There we go, we're back up. All right, so next one is button actions for press, release, or a short or a held. Long one for the modules. So this is some modules accept variable field input, such as the ATEM program input. You can, rather than it being a drop-down menu, you can have it look at, let me jump over here. I'll keep working on this ATEM button. So I can use this set program input from variables. Let me just start a new button here. ATEM 1. You can see set program input is going to be these drop downs, and that'll just sort of hard code it to, you know, camera 1. So that's one way to build out buttons, is just like button 1 equals button 1. Or if you use variables, you can go ATEM 1, set program input from variables. And you've got essentially the same thing here in terms of it's addressing ATEM 1. You can't do variables on the connection, but you can do variables on the ME and input ID. And so you can see here, I've got constellation 2ME, so I've got 2 MEs I can choose from, or I've got like 20 inputs and a bunch of other things that I can choose from here. And these all have input IDs, and 0 is black. But I can give it a name. So I have previously in my custom variables, I have a ME, where is it? Somewhere in here. ME, custom ME, mix effect layer is what I'm using. At the moment, you can see that that equals 1. And under buttons, under, this will change depending on which ME I select here. So I've got ME1 or ME2. I should probably go back to variables, custom ME, just so you can see. Down under, so many things here. Where did it go? ME, okay, so see ME equals 2. But if I click on ME1, then that's gone back to ME1. So my custom variable ME, mix effect, is equaling 1. And so when I go to buttons, I can go to, I'm losing track of where I was, here. And so ME, I could hard code it as 1, or I could put it in as a variable, custom ME, like that. And so now, when I change my mix effect layer that I'm working on, then this input will be addressing input ME1 or ME2, rather than having to. What this means is, I've got a Stream Deck here with 32 buttons. If I was to program every single input on a 4ME plus, which is like 80 inputs, and then you've got 3 ATEMs, like there's just like hundreds and hundreds of buttons that you would need on a desk to be able to push this. And so this is where you can filter down between, am I working with ATEM 1, 2, or 3? Am I working on mix effect layer 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then it'll, basically, like all the buttons are there within a very contained space, rather than having to build huge real estate, or to go through a lot of pages to get to a button. Okay, so that's that one. And then the input ID at the moment is 0 will equal black. If it was 1, it would be camera 1. I'm just going to disable this one, and then I can shift click it so you can see if I click on that, it's cut to camera 1, which is here. Let me come back to super source. And so now, instead of input ID, this is where, and we'll get to this in a second, but we want to probably add in like a local variable, and we can go user value, and we could just call it ID or whatever. We're going to persist it because we want it to remain there. And let's call this number 2, just so it's something a bit different. So there's going to be camera 2, and then in this here, I can go $, local ID. All right, so now when I shift click it, it should cut to camera 2 down here. And that's, yeah, hopefully that makes sense in terms of how you would use variables within whether it's press or release part of the button action, or you can add a duration group, and then you can have short release or releasing after a certain amount of time, which you can edit for how long you have to hold it, and whether or not you want it to execute it as soon as it reaches that time, or if you want to just, you have to get to that time, and then however long you wait to release it, it will run the actions when you finally release it if you've gone past that time. That's kind of that execute while held button there. All right, let's get back to, let me just check I'm in the right spot here. Button action within logic. Okay, so we looked at variables within button actions, but you can also sort of place it within an internal logic if statement, so that you can sort of conditionalize whether or not that would execute. So you can execute actions if a boolean expression is true or if it's false. And for example, you can check if a media player is still selected to allow DSK operation, is how I have used that, which is over here. So something I'm building out here, which will be in the next version of my profile, is the media pool. And sorry, I lost my train of thought here. Okay, so I've built a structure here whereby you can, I think this will work. Let me go to ATEM media pool. So I've got a bunch of graphics here. And so for example, this one's transparent. It's got my name on it. And I can select this. There you go, I've updated that in the media pool, which is coming into the back of my super source, which is not ideal. And if I turn on auto tie DSK and also time out, I think that's right. This is gonna look weird because it's in the super source already. So let me just go to, let me put camera 1 in shot. No, I need to put camera 2 in shot, so you can see what I'm doing. And if I go to media pool, so when this tie DSK auto to MP1 is enabled, it means that when this is highlighted now, and when I press this button, it's going to bring this onto screen. And then when I press it again, I haven't fixed it, this text is not quite right, it's gonna take it off screen. So that's the tie DSK, so I can manually bring a graphic on and off. And then I have also an automatic timeout. So if that's selected, then when I select a graphic, it will change. But if I select a graphic and then push it again, then it'll put it on air and it'll tell me the countdown here of how long is left before it automatically takes it off screen. And then it goes back there. So what I've got here is conditional logic so that when it's on screen, I'm not automatically taking it off. So I'll just turn this one off. I can put this on screen, and then I can actually cut to a different graphic that's not selected. There's a still image of me. There we go. All right, so between these two probably makes more sense. And what's not running here is the operation to the auto DSK to take the graphic off screen. I have to push the selected button again in order to take it off. Because you don't want to like have a graphic on screen and then push a new graphic and then it'll like flick to it, but then fade it off. That would be weird. So let's go back to our actual super source and take a look at what we're doing here. So again, I've got my custom ATEM defining if I am operating the media pool of ATEMs 1, 2, or 3. So on media pool 1, I am taking some actions, and I'm setting the media pool to the still, like still 1. But then I've also put in this internal logic if statement, which is, if you go logic if statement, you'll come up with this, which is when a particular condition is true, then take this action. Otherwise, do this. Up and leave else empty, depending on what you want to do. I'm just going to delete that. But I've got this same one here. So this if statement is when it's true that check boolean expression. And so I've added in boolean, check boolean expression. If I'm saying I've got two variables here, which I won't go into, but it's basically saying local still selected equals local. It's comparing two variables to work out if that media still is selected. And if it's not selected, then this is not going to run. If it is selected, if it is the one in the media pool, then it's going to push another button, which is another variable. So I've got a action to trigger, press, and release a button, and it can either be this button or it can be from text or from expression. And rather than it being sort of a page number, which is like, it'll give you, what are we on page? So it'll be 23/1/0, like that would be like this button over here. This variable here is containing the button that I'm pushing, which is, let me go back over here. If I scroll gently here, this toggle DSK. So this is where the secondary layer of bringing that ATEM on or off is hiding. And it's only being triggered if that button is already selected that I would take it off or put it back on there. So that's getting a little in depth, huh? Let's move on to button feedbacks, conditionalize. So I was sort of referring to it then, which is conditionalizing feedback based on a value or expression. So for example, we could limit the feedback to display only ATEM 1 rather than ATEMs 2 and 3. So if we go back to my page 17 and we click on this button, remember that this program button is input 1, but depending on whether I'm controlling ATEM 1, 2, and 3, it's going to, press steps 1, 2, or 3 to control different ATEM actions. And then I can add feedbacks in terms of like, is this in program or is it, not in program? But I want to conditionalize that because I don't want to show all 3 ATEM states because it'll just take whatever is stacked at the bottom will be the last correct state that gets read out. So this is where, if I minimize this, you can see that this is stacked in a way where I have a feedback working out the style of the background based on whether I'm controlling supersource or upstream key or whatever. That's just saying like the background color. And then if the ATEM 1, 2, or 3 is my actively selected ATEM, then the rest of the feedback will follow. So for example, at the moment, my custom ATEM value equals 1, which means that ATEM 2 and ATEM 3, all this feedback in here won't show up. I'm only going to show whatever is in here. I'll expand this out. So internal conditionalize existing feedback is what the property is here. And the condition I've placed is to check a value of ATEM 1. And I'm saying if my custom ATEM 1 value is, my custom ATEM value is 1, then show this feedback. And you can see each ATEM has a stack of feedback in terms of multi-viewers, supersource, auxiliary, program, preview, and this is all going to change depending on those variables as well. So for example, if I have selected ATEM 1, and if this program source from variables is ME, in this case 1, and local slot stored, that's going to equal 1 from the local variables, then I will put input 1 into ATEM 1, and that's showing me like a PNG feedback here, whereas program, this one, is going to show me the color of red if I have selected that one. So there's like layers of feedback that you can put there. The main thing to remember here is that you can, if you come down to add feedback, I'll probably come over here. We can go to feedback and we can go conditionalize existing feedbacks. And so that was my check value of custom ATEM equals 1. If it does, then we can show ATEM 1 program source from variables, and so we're sort of limiting what feedback can come through to this button to reflect what machine we're actually addressing, and that's where you would change those ones there. Okay, what do we got here next in my conditionalize? And then we should have boolean feedback. So this is determining a true or false scenario and then defining the button feedback. So for example, we can hide the ATEM input if unavailable. So we'll go back to my button here, and we can go to here. You can see here, I've got a Constellation 2ME, which has 20 inputs. I've got inputs 1 to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, auxiliaries, program, color, and then these ones are grayed out. These are the multi-views, which the 2ME can't actually, it doesn't have those values. So if I had connected a ATEM Extreme to this instead, then this would show up. So for example, actually, where am I going? ATEM, if I do press ATEM 2, is that right? Let me press the ATEM 2. Oh wait, I think I pressed it too long. I turned it off. There we go, ATEM 2. You can see that these have now populated, showing that on ATEM 2, I can actually change the multi-views 1, 0, 2, 3, that kind of stuff. Whereas if I select ATEM 1, then on the 2ME constellation, it's not available. So how do we achieve that feedback? Well, part of that is a boolean. So if we go to feedbacks on this button and I scroll all the way down the bottom, you can see here I've got check boolean expression. So I've gone check boolean expression, and then I've got this. I've got a local variable up here called input available. Where are we? Input available, which is a sort of compound of the ATEM name, which is also a compound of the slot ID. So this is 9103 within that. And so this is like pre-packaging it a bit like an expression does, but locally on the button. If we go back to feedbacks and scroll all the way down the bottom. Okay, so I'm saying if that is reading out as $NA, then I know that it's not available, in which case we're going to change the parameters of, text alignment, PNG, font size, and in this case, we can change, the text to be dark so that we know that it's not available. And then I've also got another custom variable in here, which is the slot stored. So I just want to remember that, okay, this button is referencing 9103, even though it's not active at the moment. So that's sort of the feedback that you can put in there to generate an understanding of what is available. Ooh, I think I pressed that twice. Boolean feedback, and let me go next one. You can also change the text field, which I just sort of showed you just then, which was here. So once you add in a text variable, it will pull down from default whatever is up the top of the button text, but you can change it so that if this variable is true, you are altering the button here is just like reading out as this local variable. All right, next up, local variable. You can, I think I jumped ahead there, local variable. So a local variable is a value that is limited to the individual button. So for example, you can quickly duplicate button variations such as ATEM inputs. So I was showing you over here, I can, local variables. So I can go to, where could I pull it from? So this is, camera 1 is if your local variable here, slot sort is 1. If I copy this button and just paste it down here for the moment, if I go to local variables and make that 2, now I can see this is camera 2. I do need to cut to update that feedback. So I think that I need to refresh the module for that feedback state to refresh. I think that's right. We go across. There we go. Camera 1, camera 2. That'll update eventually. It's a little slow on that copying, but once the module's been refreshed, that will reflect the proper. There we go. Okay, so now we've got the slot stored is number 2, and so into here, slot stored, this is where I'm actioning my program or preview from that variable rather than the local variable, rather than a hard number, and that's important because we don't want to I don't want to create thousands of new variables and manage them. I just want to manage it on the button, and that's what makes that much easier. Okay, let's try this one. Local variable precalculate value. I kind of showed you this before, but you can on sometimes when you put in, this is kind of like an expression variable. So down here, I was trying to show you this one in terms of showing if the input's not available, then I want to gray it out. This, if I put in the compound expression here, it wouldn't actually calculate, so I have to pre-do that in the local variable. So I've just created a user value called is input available, and then within that I've got this sort of compound one for ATEM1's short name. And instead of ATEM1, I'm addressing my custom variable 1, 2, or 3, and the short name is going to be whatever is pulled from slot stored. Remember that was this one, so slot stored would equal 2, so short name number 2. And so then I'm saying is input available, and I can sort of check it up here. If I put in $parentheses local input. Yeah, input available. Okay, so you'll see that this local input available, this thing is reading out as camera can 2, like camera 2, and I can delete that because I've already got that in there. This is the same as this one actually. This is, I probably could just like put that whole thing in there, but that is, this text field will render that out, whereas an expression wouldn't read, it wouldn't convert these bits here. All right. Next up, we did that. And then triggers. So we can take an action based on a condition. So for example, when I start my shows, I have auto triggers. The live stream is auto-triggered the start or the pre-roll sequence based on a trigger if that's on or off. So over here, I have under my clock, I have a pre-roll, show, start, end, and wrap. Usually I'm just I'm automating the start of the show with these clocks, and I can, if I select it, then it will automatically run. Like that, and the yellow is showing me that it will run at, so 11:35 is, we started a bit late today because I was trying to I had so many variables to try and work out and put into my run of show spreadsheet. But normally it would be 10 a.m. and we can see that I'm 57 minutes past the pre-roll here. So under triggers, let me go to, what was I going to? My super source. Under triggers, this is where all your triggers will be. You can see I've turned all my auto show ones off. And I'm basically saying on any button depress, computer locking, condition becoming true or false, time of day, startup, time interval, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of parameters you can put in there. I'm using on condition becoming true, and that's where I've got this check boolean expression under the conditions that I've got a variable, which is my clock show pre-roll string, which was under clock pre-roll. So that was this one here. So this is what is reading out as -58. And I'm saying when that equals the time of day, then take that trigger. And so normally this is in the positive, so I've got 5 minutes, and when it gets down to 0, it's going to equal the time of day that has been entered in there. Okay, and then I'm going to take this action, which is I'm going to push a button, which I have on this page 4 here. So it's going to push my pre-roll, and it's going to trigger a whole bunch of things to get the web encoder going and start YouTube and start recording and all that kind of stuff to get those that show underway using a variable. All right, let me just check in here. Let me see what we got. And we're going to take a look at the show time of day. Is that right? I don't think that's right. Part 5, variables. I think I jumped ahead. Show time of day. Okay. Let me go to, I think we've already done that. We're going to build out some buttons here. So the first one can be a ATEM in terms of page jumps. So I've been building everything on the buttons, but maybe if you've got 3 ATEMs, for example, you might want to jump to a specific page so that if ATEM 1 is selected, then your profile will jump to a page that controls ATEM 1 buttons, and then ATEM 2 could be on a different page. So that's kind of another way of doing that simply. For example, if we go to close up, where are we? Here. Under my ATEM, I've got my 1, 2, or 3, and so if I had, if I want to go to my like input, at the moment they're all in the one page, but I could put it so that my page jumps to a different page if ATEM 2 is selected. So let's just do a little, where am I going to do that from? Let me see if I've got some space on page here. No, where do we got? This one. Okay, let's delete that button. Okay, so I have a blank page here, and I'm going to go to my, I need to get to my super source. And we're going to be building a button here. So again, we're going to go, I'll just put in the, what are we going to call this? ATEM, go to ATEM dollars, custom ATEM, go to ATEM 1 is currently what this is called. And again, I could make an expression here, and I can put in my custom ATEM. So remember, it's going to be 1, 2, or 3. And the press action can be page, surface to page. Okay, and this is one way of doing it. So current surface to page 16. I think I have my ATEM home, but I also have like ATEM, so then I can, where are we? I can duplicate this for ATEM 2, and I could type in, I've got a page called ATEM 2, I think, home, here, and then I can duplicate this again, and I've got a page called ATEM 3, home page, so on page 54. So this button here will say go to page, go to ATEM 1, and then it's just going to jump to that page. So I need to change my, I want to keep that one there. I'm just going to go to, where is it? Interactive buttons, emulator 1. So I'm going to change my ATEM to ATEM 2. Let me just bring that one up. So now I can see this is updated to ATEM 2, and so now if I press this, this has gone to ATEM 2's home page here, and I can exit out of that. And let me just go back to this button page here that I've got as a demo. And if I go ATEM 3, which is actually offline, then now if I jump here, it's going to go to ATEM 3, which is offline, and it would be better if I actually place that on a home page that is easier to get to, but you get the idea of how that is going to work. All right, next one is, not that one, this one. Google Sheets, embedded data cells. This is how I'm pulling a lot of the data into the show. These modules are looking weird because I think they're trying to run it, but there should be some underscores here. Sheet list 0. So basically I'm taking the cell value is that top one, like sheet, workbook 0, list 1 is the name of the sheet, and then A1 is the cell. And so it's going to give me the cell name on that sheet. And instead of it just being hard-coded to list1, A1, I could have it list custom value and A custom value, so that as I change the custom values, I can pull different data in. So let's go to our super source again and create another button. And let's go to sheet. Where is it? Variables. Sheet. And it doesn't show you everything because there's going to be like hundreds of variables available. It'll usually just show you the first one. This is what I was talking about. Sheet 0, list 1A1. If I copy that, and I'll show you what I've got here. So I have a spreadsheet. I only have one workbook, so that's referenced as 0, and I just kind of work with that. But I have multiple pages in here that all have names. And again, I've given list 1 and list 2, list 3. These are my run of shows, like a list of run of show, and I can update them and pull data from them into Companion. So list 1 is the show I've been running through at the moment, and you can see A1 equals pre-roll, showing that's when I start this show, it's a pre-roll. So this is the value that we're going to pull when we put it into our buttons page, which I copied already. And so we can paste that in here, and you can see if I make it a bit smaller, 14, pre-roll. So this is the data from that. So I could have multiple workbooks, but I really just stick with one connection to a workbook. And then list A1, this is where I'm going to update that data to reference different sheets, and then A1 is going to be different rows. So I'm going to jump ahead because that'd take a long time to build out. But you can see in my profile, I've got one called log, which is a Google Sheets way of logging data, pulling data out of a Google Sheet and putting it back into a log. So here I have a list 1 row, and so I've got, this is just text list, but I've got a custom variable called sheet list. So this is sheet list, remember 1. Remember I had over here, this is called, so if I change this to just list, then that's not going to work. This is list 1. But in Companion, I can change the reference by putting in a custom variable here. So create that custom variable, and then I'm going to pull this out. So it's down here actually. So you can see that I've got multiple rows, and then within sheet log C, this is a variable within a variable. But down here I've got the same one, which I guess I could just copy and maybe paste here to make more sense. Dun -dun. Sheets embedded cell data. List custom, okay. Google Sheets embedded cell data. So can you see that this, it says Google Sheets embedded cell data, which is pulling from, where are we? Down here. Where is that? Google Sheets embedded cell data. This field here says A26 on list 1, and this is how I'm sort of working through my my run of show. And it changes when I, so I've built buttons that can update this. So you can see here it's changing what is the actual inputted data here. So on row 26 here, so remember we had sheet list row, that's just a number, and I'm increasing that up and down with actions on these buttons. And so 25 is ATEM Page Jumps. So if I come down to 25, you'll see ATEM Page Jumps. So this is really the only way to, like, in a sane world, bring in data from Google Sheets. Because if you're hard coding every single cell and button, then you're going to spend all your time just managing a companion profile rather than using it. And so that's where these variables within variables can create functions that are going to pull out, like, cell data that can work through like a bunch of rows. All right, and delete that button. So I think I made that point. ATEM Page Jumps, Google Sheets, and what was it? The ATEM Input. I jumped that one. Okay, Q&A. Let's go to Q&A. I don't think there's any actual. I don't know if there were Q&As because graphics crashed. Let me just see where we go. Over here. No, not many things. It's pretty in-depth one for today. If you've gotten this far through it, congratulations. We are, what's that, about an hour over? Like an hour into a show. And hopefully that helped break down some of the variables that are available. And I think next week we might talk about expressions, because I was sort of starting to go into expressions there. They can get a lot more complex. We were talking about, if you remember, getting started and down to secondary admin controls. Down here is where you'll find all the fun stuff, which is expressions. And you can really make your variables work with expressions. And there's different ways of like formatting expressions to put text in there. For example, you could have decibels. So you're combining a variable with some text to denote what that number is. And a whole lot of operators that you can use, and also a bunch of functions in terms of pulling data out of a set of data, or string operations to concat something or to expand something. And then a whole lot of time, where are we? I think it's down here, time operations that I was using with clocks in terms of like running the show and automatically triggering things. So there's still a bunch of stuff that we could do with that. And don't get overwhelmed by it. If I'm spending a lot of time doing something, I remember all these things in terms of like, seconds to timestamp with the string. But then you forget it. And so you're going to come back to this document, and that's where you're going to get all your info of how to put together what you're trying to build. All right, I think that should do us for today. davidjoshuaford.com is where you can go. If you want to just grab a profile that's pre-built, I have those available for purchase, which will save a lot of time. I know, because I've spent a lot of time programming it, controlling ATEM, Canon PTZs, and a bunch of other gear that is coming soon. So until next week, take care and enjoy your live streaming automation. All right, bye.